Hi everybody. Are you there? I'd love to see you join in. If you're online, please come online and join me. Is anybody here? I don't see anybody joining. Please join me. I'm online here. I want to have a conversation about white women, Mother's Day, Ahmaud Arbery, and Anne Frank. And I hope that you will join me for this. If you're here, say hello so I know that you're here, because right now I don't see anybody on here. But please do join me if you are online, and say hi when you do, so that I know you're here. And I'll wait to get started. Hi, there is one person here. Hello, hello, please say hello, whoever you are, because I can't tell who you are if you don't say hello. And please, others, join in. I would love to have you here. Let's see, I guess I can invite some friends to watch. Okay, many of these friends already watch my stuff. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Yes, I want some of these. Okay. Folks, I want. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Please say hello if you're on. I want to have a conversation about white motherhood. Okay, let's see. Wendy. Let's see. Okay, let's see. What else can I find? Okay. Okay, hi Cherie, how are you? You're my one friend who's watching. Thank you, Cherie, I appreciate you. Please tell me how you're doing. And maybe let's connect by phone after this. So now there's two people. That's good. Okay, hello. Please say hello if you're on. Yes, I know you did. Yes, that's okay. And honestly, I'm sorry. You know, I wanted to have this conversation with white moms about Mother's Day. Hi, Destiny. How are you? Thank you for joining. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. So I remember when I was a little girl, and I don't know, I was probably around 11 or 12 when I read Diary of Anne Frank. And I remember doing the math and figuring out that hi Stacy Parson. I remember doing the math and realizing that my own mother was 9 years old when Anne Frank died in the concentration camp at Bergen-Belsen. And I remember asking my mother, you know, why didn't you go over to Amsterdam and rescue Anne Frank? Like, why weren't you there? Hi, Dave Mertz. Thank you for joining. Hi, Tracy Lynne Counts. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're having a conversation about white women, motherhood, Mother's Day, Ahmaud Arbery, and I'm starting with a conversation about Anne Frank. So yeah, I'm telling the story that when I realized that my own mother had been alive when Anne Frank was alive, although she was only 9 years old, I asked my mother, why didn't you go over to Amsterdam and, you know, rescue Anne Frank from the Nazis? Like, why didn't you take action? And honestly, hi Tracy Lynne Counts. Thank you so much for watching. I've been having that same feeling, you know, for the last 5 years. I've been harping on this, pleading with my white friends to please take action. And you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. If the pandemic doesn't teach us that all of our fates are tied together, I don't know what it will take to get us to take action. And tomorrow we are celebrating Mother's Day. And I just want us to step back and reflect on the way how white mother's mother is making it impossible for other mothers to mother. Yesterday on Twitter, John O'Reilly asked, "What are you doing to make sure you're raising children who won't kill mine?" And that's what I want us to ask, white mothers. Are we teaching our kids how to be anti-racist? Are our kids learning from us how to be anti-racist, or are they learning to do the same behaviors that we learned from our parents? For example, are we teaching our kids racism is terrible, Dr. Martin Luther King is wonderful, and the way to not be racist is to be colorblind and to treat everybody the same, but not actually role modeling to our kids what that looks like? And are we saying then that that is enough, that that is sufficient? Because that is not sufficient, folks. That is harmful and racist, okay? If we teach our kids that we have what we have because we worked hard and other families would be fine if they just worked hard, that is harmful and racist, okay? Listen, and I'm saying this with love. White people in our country have what we have because of white supremacy, because of 400 years of wealth accumulation policies and practices, genocide of Native Americans, slavery of African Americans, Jim Crow violence, and all kinds of wealth accumulation policies that were directly targeted to white people. That is why we have what we have, okay? The system of white supremacy only really benefits a very tiny group of people at the very, very top, but it gives all white people enough that we are willing to uphold that, And Britany Patent tweeted out, it took 74 days from the time of Ahmaud Arbery's murder to the time that the men who did it were indicted. And that means that there were 74 days that they were there in Liberty County, Georgia, without a fear in the world that they would be indicted, right? They didn't flee. They didn't try to abscond. Even the guy apparently who leaked the videotape says that he leaked the videotape because he thought it exonerated them, would not lead to an indictment, folks. Do you understand the level of entitlement that is wrapped up in that? The level of white people will never hold white people accountable, even when a heinous crime is committed, even when there's total evidence of it. And it's true. I mean, the first DA, white woman, didn't indict because, in fact, recused herself because the guy who did it previously worked at the district attorney's office, right? What I am saying here, and I'd also like to ask, who is the mother? Who is the wife of that man? Who is the mother of that son? And what did she teach them that led them to commit this heinous crime? Okay? And all of us, white mothers, all of us have the opportunity to end this cycle, okay? If changing the laws, if changing federal law were enough to end discrimination and racism, we would not be where we are 50 years after a movement that people gave their lives for to get our federal laws changed, okay? So discrimination is banned. It is against the law. But that did not change white people's hearts and minds and practices and behaviors. Okay? That has to come from us. There's no federal law that can pass that say white people stop being racist. That has to come from us. That has to come from a recognition that we are harming. We are actually killing other people in this pandemic. And even before this pandemic, systemic racism leads to diminished life expectancy. Here in San Francisco, people who live in Nob Hill live 10 years longer than people who live in Bayview. Okay, it's literally killing people, ending their lives. And the way it has to change is by us changing, by us learning to relate across difference as equals. And I have it in me too. I was raised, you know, I was raised in an all-white neighborhood. I didn't really develop. I had one black friend when I was growing up, who I met through the church. But other than that, you know, and there were a couple of black students in my high school who I was friendly with. But I learned all these stereotypes growing up, okay? And I did not realize how deep-seated they were until I started to have conversations. I'll never forget having conversation with a year-up student who was a black man. He was like almost 7 feet tall, 300 pounds, okay? His name was Marcellus, very, very intelligent guy. And we're having a conversation and he's explaining to me what it is like to be him. How when he gets on the bus, like he has to literally like try to the extent that he can to shrink himself because people are like cowering in fear when they see him. But how do you shrink yourself? How do you erase yourself? Okay? It's impossible, folks. We have to recognize the humanity in everybody and in every child and in every human being in our society. And we have to change. And if you have any questions, if any white women, white mothers are on here, you know, and you have questions, please type them in because I can read the chat. If you have a question that you'd like me to talk about, I'm happy to stay on here as long as you have questions. If there's things that you feel uncomfortable asking me about in a public setting, you can DM me your question and I will be happy to answer your question. But I want to kind of walk you through like the research that I've been doing for my book and what I've come to understand about why white women behave in the way that we do. Because I think that will help us to start to change some of those behaviors. So, as you know, in 2018, there was a lot of white women calling the cops on black people for inane reasons, like falling asleep in a dorm, you know, permit patty, that the girl didn't have a permit to sell the lemonade, or that they were barbecuing at Lake Merritt. And I really wanted to understand, you know, what was at the foundation, like where is the humanity? Thank you, Tracy Lynn Counts. God bless you, Tracy Lynn Counts. Love you so much. God bless you, Charmaine Pierre Hosang. Love you so much. You know, why would white women feel so compelled? And these were highly educated white women. These were women with degrees from Stanford and prestigious universities, a Princeton student. Like, why would they feel so compelled to police the behavior of people of color? And I really wanted to understand that. And doing the research, going back to 1619. So 1619, you know, is when the first when British slave traders first kidnapped and chained Africans and brought them to Jamestown to be sold into bondage. And last year we had the 1619 commemoration, and I was so happy to see Nicole Hannah Brown this week get the Pulitzer Prize and a posthumous Pulitzer Prize for Ida B. Wells in recognition of that. But one thing we didn't really talk about, yes, Ahmaud was jogging, exactly. One thing we did not talk about in 1619 was who else came over in 1619. So the same settler colonialists who had ordered, quote unquote, the boatload of enslaved people also ordered a boatload of women, white women from England, to come over to be their brides. Because from the beginning, white men recognized that they had to make this an intergenerational enterprise, right? They were only going to live for a certain period of time, and they needed to have women and children in the colony to stabilize it and to ensure that it would continue beyond their life. And so they got together and they paid for this shipload of white women to come over from England, and then they did this like round of speed dating, and the women got to choose who they got married to, and in exchange for their hand, the settler colonialists paid with tobacco, right? And the reason why I bring this up, so back then, when women got married, we ceased to become people. We literally legally became our husbands. It was the same in England. And I really wanted to understand, well, why would any, white women want to do this? I mean, this seems like, first of all, it's really dangerous, right? You're moving to this colony and there's a lot of danger involved, risk involved in that. There's disease, there's just all kinds of things it's a very difficult life. Like, what would motivate you to want to get on a boat and come over here? This is how white wealth begins and the deepening of white supremacy. That's exactly it. It all goes back to 1619 and this whole system of white supremacy that was instituted then, that continues to this day. And the only way to change it, white women, we are the glue holding this shit together. We are literally the glue that keeps the patriarchy in place. And it's both in our behavior in the workplace, in the community, and those of us who are mothers, the way we raise our kids. That is so important. That is what is keeping it going, what we are telling our kids. So I bring this up about 1619 because I basically realized, from that point, white women have seen, the reason why they were willing to come over from England was because being a white woman in England was terrible too. Sexual assault was rampant. There were witch trials. Any woman who did not, kind of conform to the standard of getting married and was viewed as a threat and could be killed, right? So that was why they were willing to take this risk. That's why they came over here. And from that time, we have been dependent on our husbands, and we have been their helpers in instituting this system of white supremacy. And in exchange, they have given us material comfort. They have given us the sense of being protected, right? They've centered this whole system on us, that we are these delicate flowers, who must be protected from the subhuman man of color who's gonna come rape us and be the predator on us. And when we have said, oh, this man tried to rape me, they have given us all kinds of attention and centered us and centered our feelings. And that is why to this day, 400 years later, white women are actually the biggest threats. Because if we say anything, a black man could get killed. When those white women called those cops, they should have known that, they haven't seen all these videos of police killing black men for no reason. Okay, they should have known what the outcome of that could have been. And yet they called the cops anyway. Okay? And the cops are also part of this whole system. So the guy who killed Ahmaud Arbery is a former cop. The cops were created, the runaway slave patrols, so back in the time of slavery, all the slave states, all the white men in them were compelled to serve a certain period of time each year on a runaway slave patrol. And they were given a gun and told to go out and genocide and remove the Native Americans and catch the runaway slaves. This is the genesis of today's police. Those same runaway slave patrol people became the Confederate soldiers. And then they were recruited. So after the Civil War, there was the Homestead Act. So Union soldiers and people who lived in the North could get these plots of land and move to the West. But they didn't let the Confederate soldiers or people from the Confederacy do that. Instead, they recruited them to be the sheriffs and to be the police. And that is the genesis of police departments, the runaway slave patrols. This is why, so when I first started in police accountability activism, I thought that police could be reformed. I thought, I'm a reasonable person, they're a reasonable person, like, we can fix this. We can't fix it, folks. It is sui generis, a racist institution, okay? And we just keep perpetuating this. And so today, a lot of people are out there doing the I Run with Ahmaud Arbery challenge, which I think is fantastic. But I would like to institute a challenge for all the white women who really want to run with Ahmaud Arbery. This is what we have to do. We have to, first of all, find our courage to stay in this fight and to not just flit in and not just do performative activism, but to really stay in when the going gets hard, when we get dragged, when we make mistakes, when we face criticism that can be extremely difficult to hear. We have to stay in. When people are giving, "This is America," yes, Tracy Lynne counts from the very beginning. This is America. Remember, I think it was last year when that song, "This is America," was so popular, right? Okay, so we have to stay in when the going gets tough and find our courage not to just flake out, okay? The next thing we have to do, we have to face this past. We have to really understand how white supremacy was created, by whom, who benefits from it, who is harmed by it, and we have to have a reparations process, okay? We cannot really move forward. We can't fix this shit until we as a society have a public reparations process. But at least those of us, we can get started with a private reparations process. And by studying this history and paying reparations to the people who are harmed by it today. Okay, then we have to understand the role that we play in systemic racism and be the cycle breaker. So every single one of us, white women, we have a position of power, whether it's as a mother, whether it's in our kids' school, in our workplace, in our neighborhood, in our community. Do you know how much, as you know, I go to Board of Supervisors meetings very often and give them a piece of my mind. Do you know how much power I have and influence I have as a voter, as a homeowner, as a middle-class white person? Like, how much more, and it's a sign of racism, but it's like I have more, how can I put it? They feel that the political officials feel more accountable to me because they know that I'm a voter and they know that I'm paying attention to this issue, okay? It's a numbers game, folks. I mean, unfortunately, here in San Francisco, Black people make up like 6% of the population. Every time, every passing year with the gentrification, it becomes less and less. So when they go and demand change, that's great. Okay, but ultimately they only make up 6% of the population, whereas white people make up something like 35% of the population. And nationally, white women, so in 2016 in the electorate, white women made up 42% of the electorate, more than white men. I'm talking about the presidential electorate. So we have a lot of power just in terms of our numbers. And that is why, and it's the same in the workplace. Okay, so in the workplace, in all likelihood, if there's a woman in a position of power in the workplace, she is a white woman. Okay, and what are we doing with that power in the workplace? Are we reaching out and making the workplace better for people of color, and particularly for women of color? Or are we using our power in the workplace to undermine women of color and to compete with them and to sabotage them and to prevent them from ascending? I've said it before many times and I'll say it again. I have faced, sexual harassment, wage gap, glass ceiling, you name it, from white men in the workplace. But by far, the most harmful behavior I've experienced at work has come from white women who perceive me as threats and would do whatever they could to undermine me, okay? We have to stop that shit, white women. Okay, so be the cycle breaker in our sphere of influence, in our kids' school, even in the decision of where we send our kids to school. Because let me tell you, if we are not educating our kids in this stuff, we are actually harming them. By the time our kids are at the peak of their career, 2040, people of color will be the majority in our society. If we are not teaching them how to relate across differences equals, if we are not teaching them how to find the humanity in people of color, they will be unable to function in the society in which they live, okay? We are not setting them up for success. So this is very important. If you want to be a good mom, you gotta help your kids to understand these things. White women, be the cycle breaker. Stand up. Now, we may very well, in fact, we may very well have to leave our husband, okay? If we are married to a patriarchal oppressor, we got to get out of there, because we can't, I know for certain there's no way I could be doing the type of things I'm doing now had I remained in my marriage. We have to align every aspect of our life with freedom, okay? We cannot be fighting the patriarchy during the day and then snuggling up with it at night. It doesn't work that way. It's got to be a 24/7 operation. Okay, so then we have to be the cycle breaker. And we have to do really deep work with ourselves to unlearn the racism that we learned growing up, and to replace our racist beliefs with helpful beliefs. And we have to unlearn the internalized sexism that we have as white women and replace our harmful beliefs about ourselves with helpful beliefs. And it doesn't just stop with racism and sexism. We have to overcome our homophobia, transphobia, ableism, ageism, anything that is preventing us from seeing the humanity and being able to be with other people and treat them as our equals, view them as our equals, and actually engage with them. We have to get rid of that whole set of beliefs. All of those beliefs were created by the powerful white men at the top, because they knew that if they could convince us all to hate ourselves and to hate each other, then they would be able to maintain power forever. Thank you, Tracy. You're like annotating this. You're like transcribing it. I appreciate you so much. So we have to unlearn those beliefs, okay? And then we must heal our relationships with women of color, okay? And that means to approach them with humility. First of all, as white women, we're going to have to be the initiators of those relationships. There is so much distrust, and there's such a long history of harm there. And this is why I urge white women, before you start to initiate those relationships, do that deep work so you put your best foot forward, okay? Because you don't want to cause more harm. We cannot cause more harm to women of color. They're already in so much pain and grief and sadness. And I should have said this at the beginning, but a huge hug to all my women of color friends who are watching this today. And I am here for you. If I can support you, listen to you, amplify you, whatever I can do. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, so then we unite, we learn how to build trust with women of color and begin having those real relationships. And then we unite behind the leadership of women of color. Listen, there are women who know how to fix this stuff. They have been fixing stuff for 400 years, okay, more. Native American women, much longer than that, right? And they understand how to organize. They understand what needs to be done to get our country out of this pandemic, to get us back to employment, to not only get us back to employment, but to transform the way we live. Because honestly, folks, we're all going to die. We're all going to die if we continue living the way that we are, because we are killing the planet. The planet's going to keep going, but there just won't be any human beings on it because our system, the economic system of capitalism that we have is unsustainable, and it is harming everybody. The only people who are profiting are the very, very tiny billionaire class at the very top. So we need to unite behind the leadership of women of color and follow their lead and support them and be with them. Do you know that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who is opening his state and saying it's fine, and who's all pals with the district attorney in Liberty County and all of this stuff, do you know what % of white women voted for that motherfucker? 75% of white women voted for him when they could have voted for Stacey Abrams. Do you understand the difference? Do you understand how many people are going to die because of that vote? Okay? We have to unite behind the leadership of women of color and not undermine them, not usurp them, but really support them and be there and shield them from all of the damage all of the harm that is directed at them. Hi, Rhonda. Hi, Megan. Hi, Tracy Lynne Counts. Unite behind the leadership of women of color. Thank you, Tracy Lynne Counts. You're keeping me on track. You're like outlining this whole thing. Unite behind the leadership of women of color. And then we can show up and yell. Okay, listen. These motherfuckers, the patriarchy, they are not acceding. They're not going to give us an inch. Do you understand? The U.S. Congress, Trump, the federal court system, all of it, okay? They are not going to relinquish any of their power unless we demand it. It's 100% what Frederick Douglass said, okay? Power concedes nothing without a demand. It is just, we are in a failed state, folks. We are in a failed state. And the only people who can make it come back, the only people who can revive our country are women, okay? Led by women of color, okay? So we have to unite behind the leadership of women of color and then show up and yell and tear this patriarchy down. It's really a matter of life and death. It's a matter of life and death for millions of people in the short term with this whole coronavirus pandemic and all these, its disproportional impact on communities of color. But long term, it's a matter of life and death for everybody, because we have to change. We have 10 years to end the way we treat our planet, or we're going to have irreparable climate change. It's snowing today in New York City and all across the East. So I'm sorry. This was a little bit ranty. I love you so much. Does anyone have any questions? You can type it in the chat. And if there's anything that you feel uncomfortable, asking in a public forum, please just DM me, and I will be happy to answer those questions. But I just really, as we get ready for Mother's Day, I want us to think about the mother of Nia Wilson, Alicia Grayson. I want us to think about the mother of Mario Woods, the mother of Alex Nieto. I want us to think about the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, the mother of the young man who was killed by the police in Indianapolis, okay? We have to honor those mothers. There's no way that people keep calling for justice for Ahmaud Arbery. There is no justice for Ahmaud Arbery. He's dead. We can't bring him back, okay? The only thing we can do is to prevent another senseless killing of another black or brown man, woman, or trans person, okay? Don't forget that it's trans people who are disproportionately killed, and we don't even hear about them. We don't even hear about all the missing indigenous women and girls, okay? Folks, this society, we have to change this culture of violence, this culture of white supremacy, this culture of settler colonialism. And it has to come from those of us who are privileged by this stuff, because we have the power to do it, folks. We have to get in that struggle. And we cannot be the decision makers. We have to be the, we have to be the people who follow the leadership of the people who do know how to solve these things and who are great leaders. And trust me, when women of color get into positions of power, they don't just create good policy for people of color, they create good policy for everybody. Remember, like Barack Obama, for example, he got Obamacare passed. You know what I'm saying? Like, people, he got the Lilly Ledbetter Act passed for the wage gap, okay? Folks, we have the leaders in our society who can make it better for everybody. And when white women change our allegiance, when we learn how to follow women of color and go through the steps that I outlined here in this talk, we can really make everything better for everyone. We can end the carbon emissions and all the destruction of our planet, and have, we can control guns. We can end the sexual assault with impunity. I mean, don't even get me started on the level of patriarchy right now, on the level of sexual assault and domestic violence that is going on right now. Okay, we need freedom we need safety as women for our children. 1 out of 5 children right now are not getting enough to eat. We need resources for children and families, and to end this culture of, all of the 1% benefiting. Do you know that the U.S. billionaire class has added something like $38 billion to their wealth since this pandemic began? While, 14.7% of Americans are now unemployed? Okay, do you understand what is going on right now? And then you have this CARES Act that's basically all the benefits of it is going to them. So I just urge, as you think about Mother's Day, hi Karen, how are you? Oh, as you think about Mother's Day, please, white women, let's become better mothers. Let's teach our children how to be anti-racist, and not just with our words, but with our everyday actions and the kinds of experiences and schools and houses of worship and everything else that we expose them to. We can be the ones, white women. We can become the activists. We can take our country back. We can prevent it from becoming a failed state. Okay, but there's not a lot of time left. Okay, we're on a very, very, very dangerous trajectory right now. So thank you for listening, and I really appreciate everyone staying through to the end. Hi Lisa King. Hi Lisa Town. Hi Karen Clapton. Hi Tracy Lynne Counts. Hi Selena. Thank you, Selena. And please do DM me if you have any questions or would like further information about anything I said. And thank you for watching. Okay.